Hello and welcome to day 2, and today we're going to cover the importance of stretching, which might sound a little bit simplistic and probably should be done on day 1, but hopefully you've watched the video of the dynamic stretch and that's given you some ideas. But now we're going to talk about why that is so important and also to build a little bit on it. So in this, we're going to cover the benefits of stretching. We're going to look at when and why, how to stretch, some common mistakes that people make, tools and equipment. Do you need any to stretch? And also talk about stretching progressions, how you can make your stretching more beneficial, more challenging, and better generally for your body. So let's get into it. I think one of the big things for me as a personal trainer and looking at people in the gym is seeing how many people don't warm up. And I think a lot of people think that they're saving time by not warming up. But actually there's lots and lots of evidence out there that warming up and cooling down is essential to your body's ability to adapt, to become more flexible, to increase your range of motion. So actually the amount that your muscles can stretch and contract, and that leads on to improvements in your performance generally. Certainly some of the weightlifting movements that we'll be looking at later, you need to have a longer range of motion and a fuller range of motion in order to properly work all parts of the muscle. And if you're not able to do that for whatever reason, you are not going to get the full benefit of the exercise. I think also people are under the misconception that it's just the muscle, and the muscle is like an elastic band that you stretch and then it retracts. But actually your muscle is built up of loads of fibres that are interconnected with other tissues and nerve endings and nerves that run through them. And it's not just the muscles that you are teaching to move to a fuller extent, it's also expanding the capacity for the nerves to say, yes, this is a safe amount to move. I am comfortable with this movement. I do not need to signal for the muscles to let go, to stop, in order to save the body from injury. I'm okay. I know that this is where I'm used to going. So it's a kind of more holistic thing. Stretching can reduce the risk of injuries, muscle strains, and indeed joint pain. And joint pain often comes around not only because we're using our joints, putting a lot of pressure on the joints, but also because the muscles around the joints become worn out and tired, or are used in ways that they're not used to working. And that causes then the muscles, if the muscles aren't working, the joint can then collapse and start wearing. So loads and loads of benefits to stretching. We'll get on to how to do that. So there's 2 different types of stretches that we need to know about. Stretches that we do before exercise are called dynamic stretches, and dynamic stretches are an energetic way of putting our body through its paces and teaching it the movements that we're going to be using later on. It's just warming up the muscles, it's getting the blood flowing, it's increasing the oxygen supply, and it's also actually warming up the tissues. You will notice a temperature change once you've started moving your body. It helps as well to make sure that those nerves are kind of aware that something's going to happen and aren't in panic mode when suddenly you start lifting a heavy weight and the nerves are like, wait a minute, this is way too much for me, what are you doing? And they will stall, they will stop your body from being able to progress and push as hard. So dynamic stretches are done at the beginning of a workout, and then we look at static stretches at the end. Now static stretches can be think of as developmental, and they're also cool down. We are taking our muscle to the furthest kind of stretch that we can manage comfortably without having any pain or discomfort, and we are helping that muscle to start getting the blood coming out of it and to start cooling down. It helps our body to go from an active state into a kind of calmer state so that we are ready to then move back into our normal day-to-day activities, and our body is signaling across the board that we are done with the craziness. Typically you hold a static stretch for somewhere between 20 and 30 seconds each time, and it's always done on one side of the body and then the other. So you make sure that you're stretching all of the muscles that you've used throughout the workout, and going kind of from either head to toe or the other way up. So you're just kind of working your way through thinking, yes, I've worked these muscles. And we'll look at the opposite pairings of muscles and how sometimes you think you might have only worked, say, your chest, but you'll also need to stretch your back just because your back is involved in chest movements. Like with the biceps and the triceps on your arms, when one contracts, the other extends, and likewise the other way around. So two muscles are working, even if you think you've only worked one, you've generally always worked two, maybe three, four, depending on the muscle groups. So dynamic at the beginning, static at the end. There we go. So for me, stretching is quite a personal thing, because somebody who likes to stretch in a certain way, that might not work for me. So I think you have to find your own way with stretching. And I think the best way to do that is to learn. So you can watch the video that I've put up on the app, 5-minute dynamic stretches. You can use the different stretches that I've put in each workout as well. You can work your way through them if you want. And I just want you to find stretches that work for you. You might find that you've got a background in, say, yoga or Pilates or some other sport, and you think, actually, I already know how to stretch. Great, bring those in. Add in a few others from other places. Do some research. YouTube's full of great videos of people stretching, warm-ups and cool-downs. And it's a good way of learning different techniques. The best thing that you can have is a large repertoire of techniques that you can lean upon when you've started to do things. You find that some stretches might not get to the nitty-gritty bit that you've been working. You might find that the calf stretch that you used to do doesn't now actually give you as much relief as it did at the beginning, because your muscles have adapted and changed, and because your range of motion has increased or your flexibility has increased, and therefore the stretch that you thought was great has now become less than effectual. So just think about trying as many different things as you can, learning all the time, and trying new things out and kind of mashing them together. One very key thing though is to make sure that you're targeting the stretches to the exercises. So if you've been doing loads of upper body and you only stretch your legs, there's no point. You've got to target the muscles that you've been working. I would say the biggest mistake is not stretching, but people then make other mistakes. So stretching cold muscles, as we talked about, you need to dynamically warm muscles up. There's no point starting off with a static stretch because you're not actually doing anything to help the muscle to get ready to work. Overstretching, and this is a big one where people will push their muscles past that sense of discomfort. And the discomfort generally comes from your nerves saying, wait, I'm not comfortable with this. You need to listen to that. You've got to get to that point where you're just on the edge, where you know that you're stretching, but it's not hurting, because you will cause a kind of inverse reaction where actually you'll probably tighten your muscles and cause injury if you push it too much. Bouncing, that's the other one. Like if you see somebody doing a stretch and they're kind of a static stretch, but they're bouncing their muscles, it doesn't apply so much at the beginning when you're dynamically stretching, because you're going through movements, but you're not kind of doing a bouncy bounce. You've got to make sure that it's always in a controlled manner, because that's where you can actually tear your muscles. If you finish a workout and you don't stretch, you are definitely more likely to have tighter muscles and increased soreness afterwards. The other thing I think with stretching is you think sometimes you can do one stretch and that will solve every issue you've got, but I think the evidence shows that you have to stretch pretty much daily. If you can, certainly if you're working out 3 or 4 times a week, you certainly need to stretch at every opportunity before and after a workout. And if you're doing any cardio, anything else outside of that, stretch again, dynamically at the beginning, statically at the end. And as I said, targeting stretches. If you don't target the muscles that you've worked, you're missing a trick. So a big one is, do you need tools and equipment to stretch effectively? And I don't think you do. A lot of people will spend a lot of time with foam rollers and massage guns, and I think the evidence is, a bit patchy on that. Certainly things like bands where you're using, you can use a tea towel, for instance, if you're trying to stretch your shoulder and your arms when you're touching. If you try and touch your two hands together behind your back, most people can't do that. And if you find that you've got a band or a towel or something, you are then able to pull down and pull up and actually get a better stretch. So things that enable you to get into a better position, whether it's a yoga block or a strap or a band, are definitely beneficial, but I don't think that at this stage you need to worry about that. If you've got a foam roller or a massage gun, by all means use it, but I don't think that needs to be the form of warm up or cool down. You should just look to doing simple and kind of, easy to understand stretches for both of those. And then if you want to add on a foam roller or massage gun, do that outside of the actual workout. So as I said, stretching daily is probably the ultimate goal, but you will find that your body adapts and that you don't get as much out of the stretch as you did at the beginning. And so we look at always progressing. So whether it's in exercises or other things, we look at progressing our abilities and our capacity. One of the biggest ones is adding weight. Now this can be a very simple thing like getting weighted bands. So you can put on your ankles or your wrists, and that just adds a little bit of extra resistance. So your muscles have to really start to strengthen. You'll get a stimulus that will encourage muscle growth. You'll find, especially with stretches around the hips and lower back and areas like that, unless you're doing a weighted stretch, you won't get so much benefit. You won't see an improvement in your flexibility because the muscles need to have that stimulation to actually get stronger in order to properly start to be able to allow you wider movements. So definitely, once you feel comfortable stretching and you've got to a point where you realize that it's maybe not as beneficial to you as it was, I would start to look at what small weights you can add in. That can be, as I said, straps. It could be small kettlebells or a weight plate or a very light dumbbell, just something very light just to add a little bit of progression. The other thing is adding complexity. So I've talked about yoga and Pilates moves, but if you want to start progressing from a simple move, you can then make that harder. So moving, say if you're using a hip stretch, you can go into a pigeon pose. You can go on to lots of harder yoga and Pilates moves that will use your body weight more effectively. And again, that's adding weight, but your body weight more effectively to help the stretch to progress and helps your muscles to properly develop. So it takes time. Do not rush this part. This is a 6 months down the line when you're really, really flying, and always listen to your body. You will find sometimes you'll rush in and suddenly you'll go, ow, that was too far, and you'll have to take it right back and start again. So just take it easy and listen to your body at all points. So for me, you have just leveled up. You are one ahead of most people in the gym who don't stretch, and that's a massive achievement. So if you can now put a dynamic stretch at the beginning, static stretch at the end, and you can put that into every workout that you do, and you can find something that you're comfortable with, 5 minutes at the start, 5 minutes at the end, you will see the benefits, and you will really, really understand how your body can recover a lot quicker from hard exercise just by a little bit of stretching. So there you are. Well done. That's day 2 done.